Okay, there's some now that I'm kind of rolling it around, and the ramifications of it are kind of, I've just had to walk through it now. Okay, I got to see when television was incredibly diverse during the 70s through the 2000s. This apparently period of time has been totally forgotten about by everybody. Where you had lots of different shows for decades that had all kinds of people in it. And the thing is that these were typically written by somebody that, like, they came up with the whole show. Now we have the showrunners and teams of writers and stuff like that. When before it really was that there was an extraordinary talent, say like this guy named Bill Cosby. And this guy wrote not just, what was it? There was it Fat Albert and the Gang? He had a huge and long career, going back, I believe, into the late 50s, but I know in the 60s. A lot of people don't get he is somewhat associated with the kind of socially liberal cultural revolution. But the story of Fat Albert and the Gang was legitimately the story of Bill. Like, Bill is in the cartoon. Like, he's one of the characters. He's kind of the most normal looking guy in the cartoon. So not only did he write that, then he put on, because of that show, you end up getting an entire generation of black writers and comedians who come from that one show. And there was, like, this went on for like 10, 20 years. Like, various people, like, I think Raven-Symoné, that her character spawns off of something from the Cosby line. What was it? Lisa Bonet had her own kind of like celebrity for years and years and years, no matter what, if anything she did. Then there was that show about college, which I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, but it was this show about college. It was at a black college. It was a Cosby Show thing, and it was like, everyone forgets this happened. I don't understand. I don't get how it. So all this stuff was around, and then where are those guys? Where are all those various actors and actresses? And it's like, no, ask Hollywood what happens. Don't blame society. Ask all these Jewish people who run Hollywood. Whatever happened to this whole cast? Like, why aren't they in many, many different shows? Because then you see, then if you go back further, this also is how, like, you would have characters from sitcoms become their own sitcom, like, lead character. Like, I believe Rhoda came from Alice, if I remember right. And those were two shows that were situation comedies about urban white single mothers characters. Like, I think one was a widower, and then one, it wasn't explained, like a divorcee or something like that. Yeah, so but I mean, that's what I recall. I'd have to look those shows up again. But they were very popular. Shows about normal people's lives were very, very popular. This is why, like, somebody like me, I'm like, oh, this is funny because, like, YouTube is like the old situation comedies. It's replaced the situation comedy. You live out events of the day and moral conundrums and ethical issues of the time and the tastes of the day. There's always jokes made about the various tastes of the day in these comedies. When they are in some way focused around, say, an ethnic group or some very identifiable culture, there's, like, internal jokes and also external jokes that are made. That's only, it depends how cleverly this is done too. But then there's situation comedies that, they're just situation comedy painted black, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This is actually in situation comedy, like that kind of thinking. That's a kind of storyline type that has long existed. Oh yeah, the relative from like the big city, or there's the relative who comes from the country, or there's not Bosom Buddies. It was where he had Belky Bartokmus, and he's the cousin who comes from the old country and is now living with his New York American cousin, and it's wild and crazy hijinks ensue. But I mean, like say Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it was just the same concept. You just put black people in it. I mean, it's no fucking different. That's why I never really watched it back in those days. It was very popular, and America likes stuff like that. That's how we deal with our reality, is by laughing. We got to have a way of laughing at things, and ways of sort of going through those times and all being able to kind of group together and giggle about it and stuff like that, So, not being funny and Gen Z and millennial. Unfunny motherfuckers of the present generation, but the funny ones are on YouTube. The funny ones are on YouTube. The funny ones are right of center. This happened too. There would be these characters, and they're the foil for other characters, and they're the old grumpy person who says, and they say something that grumped out, but it's funny. They also have like the more pointed humor toward, like, there's usually a character who's the wild, young, zany, funny character who wears the funny outfit of the day. Then there's the old person who makes fun of them very apropos, and everyone laughs, the studio audience laughs, and there's even a little something from the band, does a little sound or something, sound effect, back when they used to have a live studio audience. And that's the one I think would really blow people away. Well, and there we go. I've touched on two things that are critical to this. One, once there was a live studio audience. Two, most of these kinds of sitcoms came from people who knew show business. They were from an older time when you had to make that crowd laugh. They had to laugh. You had to bring that fucking roof of that house down, or don't waste their time. You're wasting the audience's time if you don't bring the house down. When I was once told that by an older guy who was really into music performance, he goes, don't waste their time, and don't waste your time. Focus on what you really want to do. If you don't want to kill it every time for the rest of your life, you're not thinking correctly about this. And he goes, it's show business. And I think about that, like you see this with some YouTubers and such, and various, like social media people, because they're not, the show business part of it, they're not thinking that, so they let this make them crazy, and it's pretty bad, but others get it. They just naturally fall into it. They apparently are kind of more naturally show business kind of people. They're a dramatist always waiting, to be released on social media. And so it's kind of nice to see some people like see Jeremy Hambley. What he described as his life, before YouTube. I mean, sounds wonderful. It sounds like it sounds like he was relatively happy. But I mean, he's kind of been sort of this shockingly effective, character of sorts, like as well as a real person, Well, so when you look back at a lot of these shows, you see the producer, like at the end, they'll have what was the production company. So these were people that they wrote and they wrote and they wrote and they wrote and they wrote for 30, 40 years, from the radio onto the TV, commercials. Like they were always doing something, because because show business is fickle and very, very, very competitive. And so when you see what's going on now with show business, that one, it's not based on making a crowd laugh. You even see people that you could tell, no, this person has all these internet followers, and it does not translate into acting. The Society of Magical Negroes has actually kind of a little secret hidden that nobody knows about. The love interest girl in it is this famously bisexual chick who is like a bisexual YouTuber who had some kind of channel where she's living with two twins, and one of them's a lesbian and one of them's straight, and it just, everything I've seen of hers is pretty cringeworthy. And she doesn't, what kind of person she really is, she's just not interesting. She's just simply, there's something that's just not there. It's just, she doesn't seem like a real person to some degree. Like a lot of stage actors now, a lot of people who get into drama, there's no bitterness, darkness, or pain in them that they can legitimately grab a hold of and seem to get across. They always come across as over-dramatizing and effeminate and over-dramatizing. That's, and also often not having kind of control of their vocal patterns and breathing. That's another, and bad looking, just body-wise, just bad looking. There's more and more this kind of, this sort of this tendency of having like really diminutive men in representing men in movies, and that doesn't work either. I mean, that just doesn't work at all. You could just look back at like 80s and 90s movies, and it's just bad. It's just bad. It's just everything about entertainment with real humans outside of pretty much YouTube and Rumble and social media is really bad. And it's coming from the start from the writers, because you don't have people who are killing it comedy-wise, which means that they have an understanding of other people. They really can form a rapport with other people. And now it's like, you guys don't have this. You don't naturally have this rapport with other humans. Yet you think you could write entertainment for, said humans. And you can't. Because you can't make them laugh. That's it. It doesn't matter anything else. And so when you get even further into it, where you start getting these people who are these writers for video games, like Sweet Baby Incorporated, and now everybody's combing through the stuff that obviously they put into it, that nobody would ever want this in a video game, like what did the weird girls bring that everybody, now the game everybody has to play, because they've once again turned some third party into mommy over the whole situation. And now it's like, oh, be nice, kids. No, you can't mod that level out. No, you can't mod that ugly character out. No, you can't. No, you can't mod that. You're going to have to play this garbage that the weird girls brought over. And they all need to deal with that. It's weird girls, like weirdos, ugly weird girls. And then there's that. We've been digging on you. We see your photographs. These are 4s and 5s. These are 4s and 5s. And it's sad, but that's the thing about being a nerd. That was the whole thing about video games and the rise of the nerd, is that there was this era of time that suddenly people were able to match with one another because you were living in the same area doing software. One guy was this guy who was doing all this video game stuff. This other woman, she just happened to know, she learned enough HTML, and she's, learning, COBOL or whatever at the time at work. It is before they've even built like the internal cafes and ice cream machines and shit like that. But they're giving you like an hour lunch. They're sitting in Palo Alto, loving life in South San Francisco, loving life. It's crunchy. You have to drink hella coffee, but you meet the love of your life, and you both. She doesn't know that much about Star Wars, and she likes it. He doesn't know that much about organic gardening, and they both get each other into something that then becomes, within the next 20 years, something that, these are industries. Organic gardening is now an industry. Video games and such like are now an industry, and so there's whole people who their lives came up from this. So there's stories. Every group of people has their stories of their time. Even relatively recently, I could think of television shows that obviously, there's a lot of people, they don't know shit about Philadelphia. I don't know anything about Philadelphia, but It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that obviously has a rapport with most people who watch. And they go through their life experience and these times and psychic experiences, laughing, and they see something in the characters that they're like, this character's so well written, I understand what the idea is behind them. I understand what the point is, why they were included in this story, in this comedy. Just like you have a friend like Rerun, who is he's just made of pure gold. He's shockingly energetic and funny, and he's like the size of a house, But that's your man, that's your homeboy. So, it's like, you don't let anybody, bother him. That what's happening. That's what was happening on What's Happening. And not Roger. There's Rerun, Roger. Oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting Rudy. Right, Rudy. And Rudy was the character who he was more like the cool character. Now, I gotta admit, if I'm remembering Rudy correctly, okay, that would be a name that at the time, that would be your man who's a little more hot under the collar, dresses more, kind of more pimpy, it just, it's because he's not going to go by Rudolph. He's gonna go by Rudy, this is just one of these things. That's what good comedy and good writing does. They touch on things that you have to know. Clerks, another one that just boom. Oh my gosh, they knocked it out of the park at the time. Like, they nailed certain things about and girls didn't come into the store smoking. No, but just they nailed the idea. And Snoochie Boochies and all this. That didn't mean anything. But it was, you had like a buddy that said that was his thing. He would say kind of goofy stuff. He was a little weird. You weren't sure if maybe, he did drugs or what, but he was an odd dude, but he was pretty solid, and you had good times with him. So the thing that I'm starting to see is that now there's this dependence upon quote unquote identity, and it takes away from the characters. It takes away from the writing, such that there is no writing, there is no character in these characters. There's these stories that people are coming up with like this that are based around goofy identity tales, and especially the stuff that's LGBTQ. I've been really trying to figure out a way of encapsulating this, and I think this is the best I've gotten so far. That focus. Nobody's learned about your identity or experience from this. That's the whole thing. It's like that really funny, good shows make people experience something in common that's funny and good, and they all can laugh about it. And they can understand the larger moral lesson. That you see, unless something's been missed about theater, something is missing in theater, obviously, now. Because there's obviously a lot of people that they don't really understand. This is what good theater is supposed to do. Not even good theater, but it's starting to show like the thespians have not been put through the task of reading the old Italian romances that Shakespeare based his work on. And that's one of those, and that's something like I didn't really know much about. But of course, how do I find out about this is not from some stage actor's post. No, some person who's considered right-wing who happens to know Shakespeare based his works on these various stories. And I'm just like, of course. Of course this is somebody who understands in some way the tradition and history of the society they live in, you know, and that the thespians and actors, they probably don't even know these works. And it's because it's showing too often that they don't know the works, because they have to do certain. My Fair Lady is fucking touring again. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, I love how. Okay, this one. Let's wrap it up with this. So the thing, you know, might be like, wait, no way you have a problem with My Fair Lady. The whole thing about My Fair Lady that now kind of digs at me. And some of you who've seen this channel, you know about this, that George Bernard Shaw was one of there's a whole end of fascism that ended up reaching into countries that you wouldn't think it would. George Bernard Shaw loved emulating Mussolini. He loved posing as Il Duce. And it was because at that time, a lot of the people that he was around, a lot of that end of Irish liberation, they were trying to figure out what kind of political system would allow them to be liberated from the British and have their own republic, and then also a Catholic Irish republic. Well, the issue is that, you see, this was at the time one of the only governmental systems that sort of allowed, in a way, for something like this to exist, because everyone thought the state would have to be very strong. They had no idea that actually, like, people would relatively self-govern. You know, and also not all societies would. I mean, that's but so the idea of what we need is a Irish Catholic fascist state. That's a sentiment that not only existed, but when you read various researchers that are like, here's what the deal is with Ukraine, here's what the deal is with these various countries that flirted with the Axis, is that the British Catholics and the Irish Catholics flirted heavily with the Axis. And I have this whole section of a book on it, to the point that there's like Irish fascists, and no one ever knew. We never talk about it. It's very, very uncool subject to bring up. But that was George Bernard Shaw. He's one of these people who just flirted with such thinking enough. And, but we have to, My Fair Lady, we have to love it. Gotta love it. Because, of course, it's that he was also espousing for kind of the revolution, and the revolution can never stop, So, oh, God, look at it. So dumb. The revolution cannot stop. Gotta have chaos. And so, yeah. All right. Well, there we go. Just some stuff I was thinking about. All right, later.